I think we should go ahead and get started because it's a very packed agenda today. We're thrilled you're here. Welcome to the statewide Cali COE Community of Practice for Environmental Literacy. We are going to jump right in to take a moment to connect with each other and with the natural world as is fitting. This is a community of practice, so it's really important for us to keep learning about each other. So we've set up a little Zoom poll today to see who you listen to in your environment to predict the change of the seasons. I know probably everyone's heard of Punxsutawney Phil, but did you know that there are all of these other characters and animals in our environment that people have looked to for a long time to predict the seasons? So we have a poll. Take a look and let us know, and we'll learn about where this group is going for its information. So you can click right on the poll to answer. Oh, it's looking tight.
Oh, not food.
About half of you, a little over half have voted. Oh, they're coming in fast. 25% more people. It's your last chance to weigh in. Oh, make sure you get both questions. All right. Almost to 100% participation. Wow. All right, we're about to close. Last chance. And Amy, do you want to share the results?
Yes. Oh, are they not showing? Share results. There we go. Do you see them now?
Do our participants see them? Oh no, Anthony, did Phil pass on? There's always another Phil. I think that's the truth. All right. 6 more weeks of winter. Okay. I guess that's where we're at. So thanks for sharing. And now getting grounded back to why we're here. We're all here to build our capacities as COEs to do this work. And that work is supporting access to environmental and outdoor learning, supporting development of district-wide plans that will bring environmental literacy to every student, especially the most vulnerable and marginalized, and apply frameworks for the work that integrate the pillars of curriculum, campus, community, and culture, and then infuse sustainability principles and practices into our own operations. And that is where we're at today, really, the sustainable, oh, where'd we go?
I don't know. Sorry, I'm apparently the worst at being the slide person. So it's just flinging all around. So okay, again.
Yes, and another important objective we wanted to remind everyone was that this is really, we want to build a community, and we know it's hard in these packed meetings. So we want to remind you that we did those meet your community of practice slides in the very first session. So those are going in the chat. When you look at those, this is an amazing and awesome group. And you should not be shy about reaching out to one another and to us. There's a roster that we have. You all have access to it. You can add contact information of other people on your team, and just feel free to reach out to each other. So, and today, our agenda is all about sustainable facilities, climate resilient campuses, and outdoor learning. And we just did our connector, and then we're going to have an overview of the topic and the context. have some an amazing visit from the Division of the State Architect, and learn more about the Green Ribbon Schools Recognition Program as an incentive to get districts involved and your COE involved, and some look at how COEs are doing this work and some time for you all to process, and then we'll close. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Andra for the current context and overview.
Okay, great. Thanks, Amity. Welcome, everybody. Excited to see you today. Yeah, so I'm going to just dive in here and say that today, as Amity shared in the opening, some of our objectives are to help folks figure out how to do this framework, right? How to bring campus, curriculum, community, and culture, and infuse sustainability and climate resilience into it. So we're really focused today on the campus, but that's not to say that we're, you can see here at the bottom, it says, and serve as a laboratory for learning. So we will touch on how that connects to curriculum and community and culture as well. So just wanted to start off by doing a little bit of like defining terms and also a little exercise here as well. So if you look at this picture on the right of your screen, hopefully you can see some things in there that would make you think of like being eco-friendly, right? And so the terms on the left are the terms that go along with the picture on the right. But if you can put in the chat box things that you see that might help a school have their footprint, their ecological footprint better in balance, right? So something that's reducing their impact on the environment, but also creating ecologically beneficial areas. So if you see something in that picture that you could put, type it in the chat box, and let's get some examples going. The other definition that goes along with being sustainable or climate ready is climate mitigation. So that's helping our school districts really understand how to avoid and reduce emissions of greenhouse gases. So is there anything there in that picture that you see that's really avoiding and reducing the emission of greenhouse gases of a school? And then the last one is climate adaptation. And so that's that idea of being climate ready, is really thinking about how can we help our schools take action to reduce the negative impacts of climate change. So what can they do to reduce the impact of high heat or wildfires and wildfire smoke? What can they do to deal with floods and stormwater pollution? And what can they do to combat sea level rise or agricultural disruptions to the community? So again, if you can find any examples in this picture, I just wanted to try to help people start to have a vision for what we really mean when we talk about green, sustainable, and climate ready schools. I'll just give a couple examples from my own experience. So in 2013, I took a job to be a site level director of sustainability full-time, which is like insane that job even existed and still exists there. But my role was to really help figure out how can we make some capital investments in our buildings and grounds that would really help us bring those definitions to life. So we did things like we had a 4-acre ecological preserve on our campus. We installed solar panels. We had a huge debate about whether or not to go with paper towels or hand dryers because you're dealing with waste and energy. But we had to really kind of talk those things through. Other examples here are like having turf on our campus. It was during an extreme drought. So we had to make that decision of like, what's the right way to go here? And then you can see a big capital investment of having this rainwater catchment system. So these are the types of things that we're talking about when we're talking about green facilities. All these things are things that we were able to later include into the curriculum as well. Now, then there's also like kind of like the more student driven exercises like supporting behavior changes. So having e-waste drives or doing no idling campaigns or banning plastic water bottles or installing tri-bin waste stations and having a big sorting campaign. These are all the types of things that we're talking about when we think of green facilities and operations. You might think like refillable water bottle stations, right? That's another way to deal with getting rid of plastic on campus. And then you can see over on the left, really encouraging things like green transportation and safe routes to school. So all of these are examples that we're going to be kind of expanding on today of like, how do you actually help your school districts do this? And how do you do this yourself in your own COE? We'll also talk about how there's a lot of key stakeholders involved when it comes to all the work that we're doing. So when you're involved in doing stuff across the campus, curriculum, community, and culture, of course, you're going to touch on all these different folks. But when we're talking about facilities and operations, like the big three that COEs are going to interact with a lot are school boards, superintendents, and business and facilities and operations, because there's so much about like capital investment. But also you'll interact with site level administrators. So we run a fellowship program where we had a lot of principals involved in that program. And of course, you're going to have grassroots efforts from students and faculty and staff and community partners and parents who are going to say like, let's bring these changes to the community. So really, we do see many, many different stakeholders involved in these efforts along the way. The other thing we wanted to introduce here as we're framing the whole session is just this idea that you can use your campus as a laboratory for learning. So I wanted to invite people to think about these questions as we go forward through the session, which is the first one is, what are the hidden messages that the campus facilities and operations teaches students and employees every day? So whether or not a campus is green or sustainable or climate ready, or not green or sustainable or climate ready, it's teaching students a message. So really thinking about, as you walk through a facility, what kind of messages are you being delivered? So for example, we worked with teachers for years who said, you know, like, I'm teaching about waste and all these issues, but there's no organics, like there's no compost bin. And in fact, you can hardly find a recycling bin. So they're saying, like, the message that we're delivering on our facilities is totally counter to the message I'm trying to talk about in my AP environmental science class, right? So those are the types of things that we want to think about is, okay, that's an issue and that we want to sort it out. And then teachers, how could teachers more intentionally use the campus as a laboratory for learning if they have all these great features that are sustainable and resilient and really could drive home those messages that we want our students to have? So that's a frame that we want to use as we go through this section. And then we're, as Amity shared before, we want to introduce today, and we'll get some discussion time later to talk about this idea that for COEs, there's really two different pathways forward. And our hope is that people will do both. But of course, you could choose which one feels like the right starting point. So on the left here, you can see we're making this claim that we need all 58 COEs to green their own facilities and operations, right? Like, we need to make sure that our own footprint is reduced and that we are climate ready. And partly that's because you want to really walk the talk of this work, and you also want to be able to model it. I know in San Mateo County, people come to us, right, for convenings, they come to conferences, they come to professional development. So as they're walking through our building, we want them to see our commitment to sustainability so that we can then teach them how to do it. And then on the right side, we know that COEs are also able to support their school districts to do this work. So we'll talk a lot today about how do you actually do that work of supporting school districts to get more green and really do this in their facilities and operations. And we'll talk about some of the key stakeholders who are engaged along the way. The last thing I want to share as we make a transition to our guest speakers is just that there is a shifting trend towards sustainable and climate ready schools as no longer really being this idea of voluntary and opt-in, and it's becoming a bit more of like, this is expected, and there's some compliance around this, and there's different rules that go along with that. So I'm just going to share a couple of different examples, and hopefully someone can put some of the links in the chat box. So the first one is that the U.S. Department of Education actually developed their own climate adaptation plan in September 2021. And so that's really on the climate ready terminology. And in that plan, they designated somebody to be the head of that work for the federal government and for the U.S. Department of Education. And then they also recommended that all school districts have a climate action plan within the next 5 years. So that's a pretty serious ask, right? A climate action plan. Most schools don't even know what a climate action plan is or how they would start that work. And so you can imagine, as we start to figure out what's the right infrastructure to help our school districts do that, they're gonna really need the help of county offices, as we are so helpful with all the other plans that they need to be developing. The Aspen Institute also released a report basically backing up entirely what the U.S. Department of Education said, but taking it a bit further, not just being ready for climate change, but also doing our part to reduce our impact in our greenhouse gas emissions. And that one also recommended that school districts have these climate action plans and adaptation plans in the next 5 years. So those are some pretty big signals that we're seeing a shifting towards this idea of it becoming more required. In the state of California, our counties and our cities are the well into that journey. And so we're just the next jurisdiction that really needs to be thinking about it. And then on the right, Amy put this in the chat box, there are mandates and expectations for doing some of this work already. And so that's just something for folks to think about is you can see here in the picture, there's greenhouse gas emissions requirements that haven't necessarily been required by our jurisdictions as much as they are for cities and counties, but we are folded into that work of cities and counties. There's regulations around water, and then waste really has the most important one right now because it comes with the idea of having to report. And so our school districts as of January 2022 should all have organics, compost bins, and they are going to need to report their waste diversion. So you can see it's becoming more and more a requirement of schools. And actually, we're really excited about our first guest speaker who can talk a lot more about the compliance side of it so that we can all start to wrap our heads around like, okay, if our school districts need to comply with this, what role does the COE play in helping them get where they need to get? So I'm very excited to introduce Ida Clare, the head of the Division of State Architect. I got the pleasure to see Ida speak at a conference in November, and it was so exciting to hear her talk about that we are making this shift again away from it just sustainability being this opt-in thing to like actually sustainability is like the fourth pillar of the work that they are doing. And so I'd like to turn it over to Ida to share that. And Ida, I think you wanted to share some slides, so I will stop sharing my screen so that you can share your own work. But thank you for being here, and we welcome you and are excited to have you share.
Thank you, Andra. I appreciate, whoops, my video keeps cutting out and I'm not quite sure why it won't stay on.
Well, it's kind of fun and exciting though. We get this little blinking flashes.
Exactly. So I guess it's not that important that I'm on video. It's more important that you hear, looks like it might be staying now. Okay. Technology, right? The wonders. Thank you, Andra, for having me speak today. I'm pleased to be addressing the county offices of education and all those that are here and bring you a little bit more familiarity with DSA. Many of you probably already know and have worked with DSA, but I do want to share a little bit more about what's coming down in the terms of regulatory development, but also what we're trying to do in our sustainability education and outreach program. So I'm going to share slides now and hold on. I think, does that?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yay. Okay. Sometimes I have difficulty with this, so I'm glad that launched. So a little bit about DSA. We provide design and construction oversight for structural, fire, life safety, and access compliance, full compliance review for these three elements. We do require you to submit your drawings to us for every modernization on your campus with few exceptions. We have we are basically the building department for K-12 public school districts in California, 72 community college districts in California, and you can see how many campuses we cover. Essential service buildings for state of California, and we provide access compliance only for state buildings, CSU, state funded construction, I should say, CSU and UC. So we're quite busy. We do have 4 regional offices to serve you. And we require that all new construction, modernizations, and site work on public school campuses, your projects must be submitted to us for review for the safety. You don't go to the locals, you come to us. There is few exceptions. There is a dollar threshold on which some items do not need to be submitted to us. And you can find that information on our website. I don't want to get too much in the weeds for that because I'd really like to get the sustainability part. We perform all our work through electronic plan review. So everything is done electronically using Bluebeam sessions. We work with your design professionals and the school district to do your plan review electronically. Again, I said we have 4 regional offices, 1 in Oakland, 1 in Sacramento, 1 in San Diego, and 1 in Los Angeles that service the whole state. We ask that, we are available to meet with you prior to any project planning. So if you want to meet with the staff at DSA, we have every day we have standing time reserved for what we call pre-application meetings, so that you can reach out and understand what the code requirements are for your project. You can discuss schedule, discuss perhaps code interpretations that may be unique to your project, but you can meet with our staff. We take minutes, it goes in the file, and that is the basis upon which we perform the review, provided the actual submittal actually meets what we discussed about. So it's a very important step, but it is a voluntary step. So we do encourage you to take advantage of that. We do provide abbreviated sustainability plan review at this time, but we do provide plan review resources on our website. We have worked with California water boards to discuss guidance for stormwater and dry weather runoff and capture of rainwater. We are also working on the water boards in their outreach efforts right now to bring public schools into compliance with the MS4 permits. Those discussions are ongoing. We also have information on our sustainability plan review page about what you're required to submit for energy regulations, and also landscaping and compliance with outdoor water use regulations, which are WILO, Modern Water Efficiency Landscape Ordinance. We also have sustainability educational resources on our website, on our Achieving Net Zero Energy, Net Zero Carbon, and Sustainable School Facilities page. All these educational outreach efforts are in alignment with the administration's executive orders to really push forth a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions to save our climate, and an increase in decarbonization of our buildings, and also our practices, electric vehicle charging. And so these are some informational resources for you that describe what our education and outreach efforts are. And these get populated over and over and over again as we develop our education and outreach program. A little bit about what's coming. So the 2022 Energy Code was approved in December, and what it requires beginning January 1st, 2023 is everything is now going to be based on electrification. So previous editions of the Energy Code pretty much rewarded gas and gave you a benefit for that if you were achieving the performance method. That has been flipped on its head, and the Energy Code really revised the regulations for non-residential construction, of which schools are a part. And so both the prescriptive method and performance method are based on heat pump technology for water heating and HVAC systems. If you want to use gas in the performance method, you can't meet it through the prescriptive method. In the performance method, it requires you to improve your envelope. So in other words, if you need to use gas, you're going to have to really augment costs elsewhere in your building envelope to use it. So it's incentivizing the use of electricity and energy reduction as well. There are two zones that can meet the requirements with both gas and electricity, and that's zones 1, which is Sierra Nevadas, and zone 16, or I should say Sierra Nevada, Lake Tahoe area, zone 16, which is the Northern California coast. Beginning January 2023, January 1st, 2023, photovoltaics will be required on your building. And if that building is greater than 5,000 square feet, battery storage will be required. And that brings in a lot of understanding of that battery storage, finding facilities. There's issues with obviously batteries, and so that construction protection needs to be considered very carefully on school campuses. So we encourage you to meet with us if your project is going to be 5,000 square feet or greater and submitted next year, to understand what you are required to provide in terms of battery storage and PVs. The Energy Code at this time does not address cooking or other gas end uses, but that will be coming. And if you want more information on the regulations, I provided a link here. But again, that begins in less than a year. And the Energy Code will be published in June of this year, so you can see it in the code requirements before 6 months before they become effective with your plan submittal. A little bit about the regulatory development we do here at DSA, which is Cal Green. There are requirements in Cal Green for schools. Shade trees are required. So any new improvement you do in your landscape areas or for new site work areas, there is a shade tree requirement on hardscapes. And again, I'm not going to get too much into the details because this is a brief overview, but there is more information on our webpage. As of January 1st, 2023, so the shade trees is required right now. That was part of the 2016 code. But as of January 1st, 2023, electric vehicle charging will be required on our campuses for new parking areas. Right now, for new parking areas and additions to parking areas, only infrastructure is required. But beginning January 1st, 2023, the amount of 20% of parking is required to have infrastructure. Of that 20%, 5% must have chargers installed beginning next year. So you can see this takes a lot of planning, right? And understanding, and it's important that you know these requirements before they become effective, and to meet with us in advance so that you don't submit your drawings and we say, wait a minute, where's your electric vehicle charging? And then it delays your project. Again, with the shade trees, where are your shade trees? And then, you don't want any of these items to delay your project. So find out more information on Cal Green. If you want more detailed information, we can always discuss that with your COEs directly. And also, again, if you're planning a project, ask for a pre-application meeting. Okay, one big initiative that we just completed last summer and is still ongoing is our Getting to Zero over time. And we created a K-12 public school district cohort, of which we had 58 school districts participate. It was a year-long process to develop sustainability plans to address long-term strategic approach to energy management, and included a lot of what this presentation is to focus on the benefits to the learning environment. What can you do to provide living laboratories to your students, right? How can your facilities respond to the educational component that you're also creating? And so we are still in this effort to encourage school districts to create sustainability plans. This initial cohort, as I stated, the formal training, which we met once a month with sustainability champions, this was all voluntary on behalf of the school districts. They were provided a toolkit to develop sustainability plans, including support on how to execute that toolkit. We still meet every 3 months because they're still developing the toolkit. COVID kind of, created a little bit of wrench on progress, but we're still here providing that support. Our goal is still to have these sustainability plans developed. It is an ongoing effort, and we hope to launch a new cohort soon. We're not sure if that's going to be a community college cohort, another K-12 cohort, but this was just the beginning of our launch right now, and of our sustainability education and outreach program. So more to come. And so what we also did was we partnered with Frontier Energy. They got a grant from PG&E, and they provided a program on the all-electric California Schools Kitchen of the Future. And this was an incentive to change your cooking facilities into all-electric and away from gas. There's a lot of benefits to that. This webinar is on our learning management system, which you can access for free through the DSA website on our LMS. On that sustainability education and outreach page, you can find a link to it. And we encourage you to watch it if you do have school facilities or kitchen facilities at your school districts, because it's a very key, important endeavor to address building decarbonization and also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And then, of course, so our goal right now is to continue our education outreach program and encourage districts to develop sustainability plans that are tied to building life cycle events. Every new construction, every major modernization, system replacement, equipment replacement, operations and maintenance. That is our goal, that if you have a plan, you look through every single improvement through a new lens, and you stick to the plan, and it is a incremental progress, advancement to getting to cleaning our climate and our climate action goals. So more information on our website. We have a listserv. If this is our front page of our website, if you go all the way bottom and it says subscribe now, that's where you can subscribe to our mailing list. We do have key interest categories. You can check as many as you want. We do not spam you. These emails do not come every single day, but you will be notified of our sustainability events, ways you can participate. We have a lot of discussions going on now with future, hopefully near-term future opportunities for more education and participation by our school districts that we're working on right now. So I wanted to let you know about that and let Andra know. Thank you for giving me, the 10 minutes. If hopefully it didn't go too long to.
Oh no, this is great. Oh my gosh, Ida, thank you so much. Like, I just really, really appreciate it. I know every time I hear you speak about this stuff, it gets me more and more excited. And I hope everybody else feels that way. There's like a part of it that's like scary, right? Like what you're saying is like, it's like so big, right? We all have to have EV chargers. We all have to have this. We all have to have that. But it's also for us, it's super empowering, right? Because so many of you are doing this work where you're like, could we get some trees on the campus? And now you can go back and say like, actually the state the State Division of Architects says you're already supposed to have shade trees on your campus. So it's hopefully feeling very empowering for you to hear all of this. And later on, we'll unpack a little bit about like who in your COE is going to do this. So again, Ida, thank you so much. I know you have a big presentation that you're getting to at 10, but thank you for your time, and please do, please do and stay in contact with Ida. Yeah, great.
Thank you, all of you.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna take back sharing the screen here, and I'm going to introduce us to another piece of all of this, which is oops, sorry, hold on, trying to find my slide deck. Another piece of all of this kind of like statewide stuff that's coming down is so that's the compliance side of it, but we also have a lot of incentives to be doing this work. So I'm going to turn it over to Tamara to introduce the idea, the concept around green ribbon schools, and just give an overview to this program and how this can be an incentive for schools and districts and for county offices.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Andra. Yeah, so we're just going to really touch on what is the Green Ribbon School Award. So I'm going to give you guys kind of an overview, maybe just in the chat or give a reaction. How many of you guys actually are familiar with Green Ribbon School Awards already? Because I know some of us have some of our schools that are already working on that, or your county office might be working on it from that perspective. But the Green Ribbon School Award is a great opportunity to help our schools be recognized for greening their facilities and bringing in sustainability to the schools. So if we want to go to the next slide, Andra. Perfect. So the Green Ribbon School Award actually started with a Department of Ed, so federal-wide award, but they only recognize 5 schools or districts from each state. So it really limited the number of people to be recognized. And the state of California said, well, we don't want to only recognize the top 5. We want to recognize all of our schools and districts that are trying to be green, sustainable schools and improve environmental literacy within the state. So in 2014, the state of California launched the California Green Ribbon School Award, which aligns directly with the Federal Department of Education or the U.S. Department of Education. And what it does, it removes some barriers for entry. So basically it gives this idea of apply with where you're at, and there's different tiered levels of achievement. So bronze through green achiever, and it allows you to kind of see, here's where we started, and encourage schools and districts to continue reapplying to hopefully get to that Green Achiever award eventually. And then the top 5 in our state that get our Green Ribbon School Awards get recommended to U.S. Department of Education for that award as well. So how do districts or schools apply for this? They apply by demonstrating achievement in 3 pillars for the Green Ribbon School Award. So pillar 1 is really all about reducing environmental impact and costs. Pillar 2 is looking at improving health and wellness of schools, students, and staff. And then pillar 3 is around effective environmental and educational, environmental and sustainability literacy. So it's looking at more the curriculum side. So if we go to the next slide, perfect. If we put this really simply, essentially what the Green Ribbon School Award does is it asks schools to think about what can they do to reduce their net impact. So reduce waste, energy, increase their energy efficiency or wasted energy. What can they do to improve health and wellness? And some of that has to do with facilities. Some of that has to do with nutrition. And in pillar 3, we're looking at environmental literacy. So what are we doing to actually educate our community about the environment and how they can help to promote this and be civically engaged in environmental and sustainability actions in our state and globally beyond that. So if we dig into the 3 pillars a little bit more, pillar 1, remember, is that reduction pillar, right? What can we reduce? So we're looking at reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, and that's really a lot to do with your facilities. So you're thinking about energy, water, grounds, reducing waste production, and then wrapped into that is also alternative transportation. So we're hoping to see more, electric fleets on campuses. So those things would be wrapped into pillar 1. So if we go to pillar 2, this is kind of split between looking at facilities and then looking at nutrition and fitness. So the facility side of it is about how can we change things that we do in our facilities to improve the health and wellness of individuals. So looking at those IPM programs, looking at ventilation, and then the nutrition and fitness is really what are we doing to help kids connect with outdoors and that nature piece of it, and making sure that we're looking at a coordinated school health program. And then that moves into pillar 3, which is where we look at that interdisciplinary environmental and sustainability STEM education attached to also civic. So some of you guys may have also heard of the state seal of civic engagement. There's a connection here where we can use some of our environmental lenses for that action. And the green pillar actually encourages our schools and districts to include that. So it's changing our educational pieces as well as looking at civic engagement for our students. So in a nutshell, that's really what the overview of the 3 pillars of the Green Ribbon School Award is. We often get schools that ask this question like, okay, that sounds great, but really, why should I apply, right? What's the big deal? So there's lots of reasons. Number one, schools will receive recognition, right? You get to put that Green Ribbon School Recognition Award on their website and be recognized by the state and hopefully be that green achiever that could even go bigger than that, right? Outside of California. So the second reason is that you want to celebrate your achievements, right? When you make good moves on your campus and you start improving the health and wellness of students and staff, those achievements should be recognized. The third reason is that you can invite new partnerships. So we've talked previously about connecting to community-based partners, and this is a great way to lean on those community-based partners to really make those changes for clean, sustainable schools. And the third reason or fourth reason is to share best practices, right? If you're doing something great at your school site or within your district that's really improving climate ready schools and climate resilient schools, then we should share those so that other schools can model after that. And then the next reason would be that your school site is an asset, right? And the environment around your school is an asset. So we want to encourage our students to get outdoors, and why not do that by looking at your school as an environment that in which kids can go and learn. And the sixth one is that it really does build school culture, and it helps kids to really think about, you know, the greater good and caring for their planet. And I think, you know, there are a lot of other reasons beyond that when you start to see these programs really get built out, but those are just some of the key reasons why schools should apply. So that's great, but how as a COE do we actually support this work moving forward, right? So one of the things that San Joaquin County Office of Education did is that we decided we would support our districts by offering workshops to go through each of these pillars, because they're big chunks to look at. When you look at the application, it can be kind of scary. Honestly, there's a lot of little details and data that people have to collect, and we wanted to support our districts with that. So with George Garcia, who wasn't able to join us today, he's at the CDE that oversees the Green Ribbon School program. We presented workshops for each of the pillars. We helped them through the application. We gave them some slide decks to help them think through like who are their key people, right? Their team that would help them do this. And then looking at each of those questions and how they can make those changes. So there's a lot of work that's going beyond that. We realized that outside of these workshops that we did, that our schools do need more support. So this year we actually have a climate action core fellow that's working with us, and he's helping to create a guide for climate action plans, and it's based on a lot of the pillars of the Green Ribbon School. So that's just one way in which we've been helping our districts, but I want to also introduce Kate and Nathan, and I want them to share a little bit about what they've been doing down in Ventura and how they've been helping their districts. So I'll pass it off to them.
So Nathan Inouye and I have been working at the Ventura County Office of Education to help schools and school districts apply to the Green Ribbon Schools application, and are actually in the process of developing a Green Schools technical guide right now. And the intent of this technical guide is to help schools and school districts apply to the Green Ribbon School Award. This guide will help schools and school districts identify contacts and resources to get to the next level in environmental implementation and expand their green school programs. It will also help schools and school districts learn how to collect data for the Green Ribbon Schools Award. And the whole purpose of this is to make the Green Ribbon School application process as easy as possible. So we'll have the guide developed in the next few months, and we would love to share it with all of you when it's done.
Great. Awesome. That's so awesome. And thank you both for introducing this. And we just introducing the green ribbon to everybody. And we can say that in general, many of our COEs are doing this work of supporting our school districts. And so we just wanted to feature a couple of them here who are doing that. And there are definitely more resources to be found on the links that were included there around the green ribbon. So So this has been a lot so far, right? So we've heard the message that like we framed the idea of what all this is. Then we heard the message that it's actually really required and it's getting more intensely required by the state. And now we're also hearing, but you know, on the other side of this, there's a lot of incentives if you get in early, right? So there's a lot to be hearing of all this. And I just want to bring it down to a couple of like really concrete examples. So Amity and I are going to share a few, like we're going to be like the case study right now and share a little bit about what we've been doing in our COEs, specifically for how we've helped to green our own COEs, and then also how we're helping to support our school districts in doing this work as well. So I'll jump in here and share my screen and talk a little bit about what does it look like to green your own COE. So I took my role in 2017-18. And when I came in, I had just come off of being a site level sustainability director, and we had just achieved the Green Achiever of Green Ribbon and got to go to DC. And so I knew what it felt like to take an institution all the way to like getting that, because we started off there as like bronze and worked our way up silver, gold, and then Green Achiever. So when I came in, that was the first thing I did with our county office is I said, okay, definitely we're going to go out there and help all the school districts. We're going to get them connected to community-based partners, but let's also look at our own operations. So we ran through the Green Ribbon program in 2017-18 and achieved bronze. And then from that, we put together a sustainable campus and operations plan for our own facility. And you can see a little bit about that here. And there's links in the if somebody could put them in the chat box as well to what that plan looked like, where I helped our own cabinet and our superintendent really understand what are the strategies and benefits of doing this work. That work over the years has morphed into a bigger plan. So a sustainable and climate ready schools action plan. So we're just finishing that up. That's really focused on curriculum, community and culture, and campus. And within the campus, we really highlight these 9 different focus areas. And we have moved beyond just the basic ones that were in Green Ribbon to also include things like marine ecosystems, because we are right on the coast and on the bay. And so for us, that's like a real issue that we wanted to bring into our own plan, and it's very local for us. And then over here on the right, we've also added one more plan to all the work that we've been doing to green our own facilities and operations, which is a local hazard and mitigation plan. And in the state of California right now, that's kind of the phrase that people have been using for climate ready, is this local hazard and mitigation plan that does address things like earthquakes and other stuff like that, but also really has started to address things like high heat and sea level rise and floods. So those are all the different plans that we've put in place. I'm in my 5th year now in the role. So there's been almost like a new plan each year, it feels like, but it's helped us really ground ourselves in like, what are we trying to do and how can we model that at our own COE? So I'll turn it over to Amity to share their journey of learning to walk the talk of sustainability.
Okay. So yeah, I thought I would share our story because we started off in about as far away from the facility pillar as you can get. So unlike Andra, I came into the environmental literacy support role, out of the environmental education field, out of the classroom. I'm in the C&I department. So I was not thinking about the facility side and dove into greening curriculum, which then naturally led to getting kids outdoors on their campuses, because you can never have enough field trips to get kids outdoors as much as they should be getting outdoors to truly achieve environmental literacy. And then once we started helping districts get outdoors and use their campus as a living classroom, you see very quickly they're not really living classrooms yet. There's a lot of asphalt, and if you're going to make these changes, there's this opportunity to look at doing all of the facilities changes at the same time in a more, thoughtful plan. And you're going to have to work with that branch. And that was when I had my big yikes, like I am so unprepared to do that technical support of that pillar for our districts. And we're not even doing it at our own district, our own facility, and realized, oh, okay, well, that's where we'll start. We need to do this together, like full disclosure to my districts. We have not done it ourselves, but let's learn together and share. And so last fall, thankfully, I found the California Green Business Network. Ours is the Monterey Bay branch. That network across the state provides technical assistance to schools and COEs and businesses to get green business certified. So they walk you through the audits, they help navigate all of what it takes to become green business certified, which has been amazing to be able to have their support. And then at the same time, we dove into applying for Green Ribbon this past fall. Green Ribbon, they tell you doesn't matter, you don't have to be strong in every pillar. You can totally apply if you've got one pillar with lots going on and you're weak in a pillar. So I was like, okay, we'll do it. And going through this process in my own COE, also, we found we'd done tons of green things and nobody knew. We had sensors on all our lights, turned them out. We had, we'd just done a lot. And so that was really validating. And so where we're at today is we've got, we're getting green business certified. It was supposed to be done this January and we didn't quite make it. A couple more months to go of making some changes, and we got that Green Ribbon application submitted. And then we've got 4 of our single school districts working along. And so I'll kind of transition to the next question of how we're helping districts. So basically connecting them with the partners that they need to do the technical assistance that I didn't feel prepared to give, like the Green Business Network. And then you can stay on that slide for a bit, Andra, it's great. It's okay. And then we launched a Green Schools Working Group in January because we have districts in our county who are doing the work already that are beyond us, beyond my county office. In how it's well coordinated with their facilities. And actually, we also discovered that our facilities, we have a new facilities director who's got incredible expertise in this area, but his work and our facilities department is all inward facing. It's just for our COE. They're not prepared to give support to the district. So that's been a huge, great learning. Like, we are learning what capacities we're lacking to provide the technical support. And that's important to identify as we move forward to figure out how we will support those districts. And I just feel like we're a living example of all those whys that Tamara mentioned for a school to apply, as we have been going through this greening, that we're getting to celebrate successes we didn't know about and share best practices and get new partners and build a culture that can show students that this is important to us because it's important to them. So I'll pass it back to Andra to tell more about the technical support her county office provides as being so far along on that spectrum.
Yeah, great. I really appreciate that, Amity. And I would say, like, I'm just so glad you shared the green business thing. That's something I didn't really mention before. When I was doing this work at the site level, we also did green business. And it's really where I cut my teeth of how to do facilities work. Like, I was a classroom teacher and I stepped into the role, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, solar panels. I totally know how to vet that. No, I didn't know how to do any of that. And how to figure out all those things. And the green business one, it was the one that really was really transformational for me, because it requires a third-party audit. So somebody actually came onto the facilities and walked us through everything, looking in the janitor's closets, looking in flushing every toilet and counting the amount of seconds that they were flushing for. It was such a huge emphasis on all the things that I never really knew about. So I highly encourage people to use these roadmaps of Green Ribbon or Green Business Certification, because it really will help you build your own capacity to understand the facility side. So what does it look like to provide technical assistance to the districts and schools? So Amity shared a little bit about inviting districts to go on that journey with you, and Tamara and Kate and Nathan also shared how you can support them to do Green Ribbon. So that's definitely a piece of the technical assistance. All of that is definitely there. What we had to figure out in our county office in San Mateo County is an actual model for doing how to do this type of technical assistance. And the reason we needed to do that is that we are very similar to what Amity shared, which is that we have nobody in our county office right now who does external facing facility support. We have only internal and only finance, but nobody who's doing the facility side of it. So as we started to get these requests for all this support on things like solar and stormwater pollution prevention, we realized we needed a model because people had moved past buy-in and were really asking for help with assessment and plan and actually implementing. So we have a model now where we provide consulting services and coaching training and professional development, assessment and strategic planning, and also project management and networking. This model is also still like, we also apply this model to our curriculum support and our community and culture, but we have found that it's really been critical for our campus support to have this level of detail. We also broke it down into like, what are tier 1 services, tier 2, and tier 3. So we were able to say like, okay, if you're asking just for like an exploratory consultation, that's just like tier 1, we'll do that for anybody. But as you get into tier 2 and tier 3, we realized we really needed to like charge some of our districts for these services, because we were in there doing some pretty intense baseline assessment work and even project management for some of them. And so that's been really helpful for us to get a better feel for like what that looks like. Some basic requests examples that I just wanted to share here is that we had a lot of requests, especially during COVID, for doing living schoolyard support. And luckily for me, I was able to get some funding from our County Office of Sustainability just before COVID to get a specialist who I think is here, Naomi, to do some work with us specifically around waste. But during COVID, nobody was on campuses. So we were like, well, you know, living schoolyards is like waste. So anyway, she's been really critical to helping us do a lot of this technical assistance. And she was able to go and walk a bunch of different sites and actually make recommendations and plans for where they could have more outdoor classrooms, where they could put gardens. And now that students are all back on their campuses, this has really morphed into these broader living schoolyard assessments and living schoolyard plans. So that's one example. Now that folks are back, we're able to do a lot more of that zero waste work. So Naomi's out there walking a ton of sites recently with different schools and districts who are realizing that they need to have these organics bins, and making recommendations for where you can place tri-bin stations and who are the right partners to connect with and how can we help train. And she's done quite a few trainings for custodial staffs across the whole districts. So those are some of the examples. We've also gotten people who've requested some support with stormwater management. So doing these rain barrel installations and rain garden installations. And I put here these labels of the folks that we partner with in our county to actually do that technical work. Because I don't actually know how to install a rain barrel or how to do a rain garden, but I know how to get the people to the school district that actually know how to do that. Other examples have been around safe routes. So we have a pretty strong safe routes department in our county office, and they've done a lot of work with making it safer to get to school. And at the same time, they partnered with those same stormwater pollution prevention folks to get better curbs and bioswales, as well as they were fixing the safe routes to school. And then we're getting a lot of requests right now for EV charging. I think that speaks to what Ida was saying before about how you need to have EV chargers. If you do any construction and renovation projects by 2023, you have to have them in your parking lot. So we're getting a lot more requests for like, hey, about that EV charging, can you help us? And so that's helped us figure out who to partner with there as well. And then we have had over the years more and more requests for figuring out how to get local produce procurement for the campus during the meal programs, during luncheon and breakfast. And because everybody's made this switch to universal meals, we're seeing a lot more attention to this of like, how do we get food, and can we do it farm to school? So that's something that we're working with our Food System Alliance to better sort out. So it's been a lot, and it's been a real journey for us to figure out how to keep track of all this. So one thing I wanted to share with you all is that we actually, just for the first time, this being our 5th year in the work, we put together a report for our new Deputy Superintendent of Business Services. We put together a report of just what's going on in our school districts, just for facilities. So we did a big landscape analysis to share, like, here's our 23 school districts. Here's how they've engaged with us around facilities specifically. So not curriculum and the other stuff, but just facilities. Here are some of the projects we're supporting and some of the things that they are really launching. And then we helped him understand that every single one of them has said, we cannot do this work without more project management support. And so that's helping us build a case that we need to have another coordinator in our county office to help with that. So we've identified that gap at our county office, that we don't have a coordinator to do it, and that we need to do that in order for our school districts to take this further. So that's a little bit about us. One last thing I wanted to share before we get you into breakout rooms is we also launched a sustainable and climate ready schools technical assistance network. So we already had a partnership network for like student facing field trips, but we decided that we really needed to launch a network just for the folks who can help with all this facilities technical assistance. The main goal of this network is to support every school community to transform their campuses to be green and climate ready. So that is just launching now, and we're working in partnership with all these different agencies to really get into the school districts. So I'm sure that felt too much and overwhelming, but I just like my end message is that we're in our 5th year. So we've had a lot of time to figure a lot of these pieces out. And so we want to make sure that other people know that you don't have to start from scratch, that that you can use some of these tools and resources to get you where you want to get with facilities and operations. So I'll turn it over to Crystal to lead our next segment.
All right, so we are going to be spending some time in breakout rooms. And before we get to the questions, we just want to remind you that when you get into your regional breakout rooms, if you decide you need another configuration, let us know. Sometimes there's too many people or too many counties that have showed up, which is wonderful, but you need another space to have a little more conversation about your own area. And if the questions for today are beyond where you're ready to get to, there are the questions from the last 2 times that we met and worked on the same spreadsheet there. So you can feel free to sort of jump into this conversation wherever your team is. So the 2 questions that we have today, focusing on this idea of greening and thinking about your facilities, is to what extent is your COE greening their own facilities? Who's leading that work? And then to what extent is your COE prepared to support districts? So the 2 sides of this coin that you've been hearing about for the last hour. So you can see the spreadsheet for this is in the chat. There is a new tab 3 for this. So when you get into your breakout rooms, you can go ahead and click on that tab 3, choose someone to be your note taker, and add into your thinking about that right there. Again, if these questions are beyond where you're ready to have this conversation, you can always go back to tab 2 or tab 1 and really even think about, what your next steps are for this. As a reminder of your breakout rooms, they are done by region, and they are open at the bottom. So you should be able to just select your breakout room and join it. So as you're coming back and we're getting back in, we are really just hoping you might drop in the chat, what's that first next step that you're taking on this journey? It might be the first step of your journey. It might be the next step of your journey, but where are you going next with this in regards to your own COE and thinking about the greening and sustainability of your space?
And I just want to offer up, as I know a lot of people are thinking about where to go next in terms of like writing up proposals and putting job descriptions together. Don't hesitate to reach out to us at the County Office of Ed in San Mateo. We're happy to coach you through any of that if you need some support with any of those resources. Okay, should we go over to Amity to close us out?
Yes. I was
Okay, good. Sorry.
sharing in the chat my takeaway. So thank you all for being here. We wanted to make sure everybody knew about, and it's on the next slide, the community of practice.
This one?
I mean, not community of practice. Yes,
Sorry.
the network, of leaders from county offices or who are currently leading community-based partner networks or interested in launching community-based partner networks and trying to use that toolkit that we put together and shared in the second session of the community of practice. So we're launching a convening on March 2nd to gather input and figure out how often a group like that would want to meet, where people are at, what people are hoping to get out of it. So please register at the link that was put in the chat. We'll send that out in the follow-up email as well. And then just a feedback survey. We really would like to hear from you. That feedback survey encourages, it requests information from folks about your experience in the community practice, but also we'd like to find out what resources you might want to share in these sessions on the upcoming topics. So we'd love to build in more voices and more of the community into these sessions. And so if you can do the feedback survey and let us know if you have a tool to share or work you're starting or question you want to bring to the group, please put that in the survey. We appreciate your feedback. And then Please also feel free to reach out to any of us in between sessions. Next time, we're all linked in that slide. You'll get the slides after we saw questions in the chat about that. And a follow-up email will give you the slides that have all the links in them. And they'll also go up on the Cali website with the recording of the meeting. And then next meeting will be April 7th, focused on funding, how to fund these programs. So we hope you'll all be back, and think about who you might want to bring from your county office to that meeting. This isn't a fixed group. You know, if you have somebody else from your team that a topic is really relevant to, bring them in. This is the opportunity to get people on board. And just a reminder to register for each individual meeting, because they don't register you for everything when you do it the one time. And that's it. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your week.